Please repeat. His beauty was enhanced by artistic engravings here and there on the walls. The floor was emerald with coral daisies. Purport. At the present moment, people are very proud of their architectural art, yet floors are generally decorated with colored cement. It appears, however, that the castle constructed by the yogic powers of Kadama Muni had floors of emerald with coral daisies. It's a very short report, but a very beautiful chapter. I compiled a few notes here, quite a few notes, and I like to read them if you don't mind. I was meditating on this sloka and purport, and just looking at the previous verses and the teachings of this beautiful interaction between Kadama Muni and his devoted wife, Devahuti, the most exemplary grihastas ever, according to Shastric description. Often great rishis and great teachers, not to speak of the acharyas, refer to Kadama Muni and Devahuti. The bond was very pure and sincere. They were I would say, the most qualified grihastas ever. Their goal was very sublime, to help one another to achieve the highest liberation, the highest platform of God realization. So Devahuti realized her role as a devoted wife. She's also known as a sati. Sati means very chaste and pure, and Kadama Muni took responsibility, responded accordingly out of love. So there is love between husband and wife, as long as that aiming to help one another in God realization. And this is actually real love, not ordinary bodily conception called lust life. It's not that kind of love. Love is really to help one another to attain self-realization, God consciousness. So I'd just like to quickly go through, and I made a few notes based on Prabhupada's teachings. I also added a few other complementary notes to this particular purport here and the whole chapter, especially this particular purport here previously about the divine architecture, extraordinary powers of Kadama Muni, who he was. It requires a proper study and understand where they come from and what's their aim, what's their objective. So Srila Prabhupada explains very clearly the modern architecture. People in this yuga, Kali Yuga, they're very proud of their achievements, technology, architectural kind of achievements, and but comparison to the Vedic criteria, and not to speak of the divine powers of Kadama Muni, not much. Because number one, I've made a point here. So, comparison with modern architecture. Srila Prabhupada begins by critiquing modern architectural pride, pointing out that even the best modern materials like colored cement pale in comparison to the opulence in Kadama Muni's aerial palace. This is not to deride progress, but to highlight the limitation of material science when devoid of spiritual power. So, I'm assuming that you've been attending the classes, the last few classes regarding this chapter, how Srila Prabhupada and also Vyasadeva explains now that Kadama Muni manifesting his gift to devotee. That there's also a reason for that. So he manifested this flying Vimana city, the Vimana city. It's incredible, like for our modern kind of comprehension. What is Vimana, which I explain a bit later. So now we're coming to the details of the decoration and the beautiful palace and the opulence and the detailed fine arts. And of course, we may bring some examples from our modern history. There are some great architects. We can go to some of the beautiful masterpieces of Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and not to speak of the Sthapatya Veda, the Sthapati masters of the south, and the Aryan era civilizations. They were very advanced in architectural masterpieces. But Kadama Muni takes it to another level, obviously. It comes to a divine power, mystic power. As Srila Prabhupada explains, and Krishna also explains in the Bhagavad Gita about the various mystic powers, Anima and Lagima. The yogis, although they're not ambitious to develop power, at least the saintly yogis, the rishis, they are great devotees. They're not ambitious to have powers, but mystic powers, the siddhis we call mystic siddhis, perfections, are byproducts of the powerful meditation. And they're able to manipulate the mahabhutas, the 5 elements and the subtle elements, and often enter higher dimensions. This is just probably in a simple way to rationalize what mystic powers are. We cannot really comprehend, inconceivable for us. Just like Krishna's potencies are inconceivable for us. So we're trying to understand this with the light of Bhagavatam, light of Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas, so we can somehow or other have some idea that it's all happening by inconceivable powers, just like Srila Prabhupada also says in many contexts, that Krishna's supreme mystic power, he creates unlimited vimanas in the form of planets and floating in the cosmic sky. He has the power to levitate them. And he says, Kadama Muni had that power to create a Vimana city, a flying city out of his power. So when we talk about his power, obviously he has bypassed the three-dimensional experience, what we see here, three-dimensional physical elements. He's touching the higher dimensions, the subtle forms. And you can see as we, even in the Bhagavatam, especially in the chapters of the creation, as we go higher in the planetary systems, the planets and the residents of those planets, not to speak of the demigods, the Ishvaras, they're taking up a subtle form, the subtle body. And Lord Brahma, especially, it comes to the buddhi, the intelligence. His body is actually made of that. And we're coming down to the middle planetary system, as we're coming down to the lower, it becomes more and more gross, physical, we call physical. The 5 elements, Agni, Bhumi, Vayu, Prana, see, water. So we have the 5 gross elements. The subtle elements are still there, but the dominating is still the gross physical elements. Our whole planet is physical. So, but the yogi is able to bypass this physical and get into metaphysical, subtle, still material, not spiritual, not transcendental yet. Obviously, they have powers within the material creation according to their meditative powers, because these yogis are very powerful, and they're able to gain these powers with mystic cities, perfections. And Kadama Muni was a great saintly personality, a rishi. He was so powerful, and so pure. He had no desire to be a grihastha. But as you know the stories when he, back to Lord Brahma's, Bindu Sarovara, and many other pastimes, that Lord Vishnu appeared to him to participate in these pastimes. Because he's a great avatar, as we read the chapters later on. Great avatars. Especially, we can say, Kapila Muni, the great avatar, will come and be your son. So, a devotee is very much inspired to participate in the pastimes, in the lila of Krishna, of course. Just like we are very much enlivened and inspired to participate Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan Lila, because it's still happening. It's Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan mission, glorifying the holy names of Krishna, spreading the glories of the holy name, Sri Nam. So Kardama Muni was very much inspired by the divine words of Lord Vishnu. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, he was not an ordinary yogi, he was a great rishi, a great maharishi, he had all the powers, and great devotee. But he agreed to please Lord Vishnu. Because ultimately on that platform of realization, it's a transcendence. There's no such a thing as brahmachari, grihastha, whatever. These externals are there, but the transcendental yogi raises, his consciousness is above. His only aim is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And especially if his son, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, adventing himself as his son. So you can see devotee and Kardama Muni are very saintly personalities. And they're just showing so many examples, and that ordinary human beings cannot really imitate, but we take inspiration. Inspiration, how to be a good husband, a good wife, and what's the goal of life. Never forget the purpose of life, which is really the purpose of Grihasthashram, to work together with the family. The objective is very clear, to please Guru and Gauranga and develop our Krishna consciousness. And then we all go back home. There's no limitations. The Vana ashrams are helping us, ideally, and Daivi Vana ashram. So they're all very beautiful and scientific process. But when it comes to a very exalted rishis, they're above all these externals. So they're already in the transcendence. So for them, there's nothing else, only the supreme object of love, Krishna. And Lord Vishnu manifests directly to those personalities, just like in Kardama Muni case. And he was giving the wife, Devauti, very pure and chaste wife, very loyal. She agreed. She knew Kardama Muni was a very austere yogi. He was completely renounced. He had at that particular moment, no material facilities. He was just completely absorbed in trance and meditation. But Devauti realized, obviously very saintly personality, that what an exalted person, what an exalted husband. So she accepted him as a husband and a guru also, extraordinary. So she inquired. And as we read the previous verses, Kardama Muni, very pleased with her devotion and love. And so Kardama Muni rewarded her because she performed so much tapasya, losing her physical beauty, her health. She just wanted to please Kardama Muni. But Kadama Muni felt compassion. My wife is suffering from me. I'm here as a great ascetic, like a great yogi, and she's my dear wife. How can I neglect her? Very interesting. So this is when this beautiful Vimana, so he provided this beautiful transcendental Vimana, higher dimensional transcendental aircraft, flying city. So it's amazing. Krishna consciousness is amazing. It's so beautiful when you read these pastimes, that nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible in Krishna's creation. Krishna can manifest any possibilities. So this Bhagavatam story is actually reminding us very beautiful divine teachings. There's always a philosophical message here, and often glorifying the qualities of devotees and the mercy and love of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that a devotee can achieve anything if Krishna desires so. Obviously, Kadama Muni was so pure and powerful that he was bestowed by these mystic powers. At his will, he could manifest this aircraft, flying city, we call Vimana. So it's very beautiful. Number 2, spiritual opulence through yogic power. The palace described here was not the result of material wealth or industrial processes, but was manifested by the mystic yogic powers of Kadama Muni, a spiritually advanced sage. This illustrates how spiritual advancement yields control over matter, far superior to what modern engineering can achieve. So you can see, we talk about a divine, transcendental architectural masterpiece, not even a three-dimensional engineering masterpiece. Number 3, materials symbolizing transcendence. Emerald flows represent the foundation of purity and serenity. Coral daisies, thrones, often symbolic of auspiciousness and vitality, perhaps hinting at the lively devotional atmosphere of the palace. Number 4, transcendental architecture. Srila Prabhupada often emphasizes that spiritual reality is not void or formless, but is more beautiful, artistic, real than material creations. This verse aligns with his teachings that spiritual life does not mean austerity alone. It includes exquisite beauty offered in devotion to the Lord. So to this conclusion, there's a conclusion also by Srila Prabhupada and Bhagavatam, illustrates the breathtaking result of yogic power coupled with devotional purity. The palace's luxurious design, emerald floors, coral daisies, serves not just to fulfill worldly desires, but also to demonstrate the potency of devotional service and the supremacy of spiritual civilization over modern materialism. Srila Prabhupada reminds us that no mundane architecture can rival the beauty and spiritual efficacy of structures born of devotion, yoga, and divine benediction. So now I've put together a complementary point, which kind of relating to modern architecture, divine architecture, and mystical architecture. Obviously, it's a divine form, what Kadama Muni manifesting here, and the detailed fine art. As Srila Prabhupada also says that spiritual power surpasses even modern engineering masterpieces. So this is a very refined form of subtle art. And generally Vimana Shastra, which is part of the greater Vastu Shastra, Vastu Shastra is more like an umbrella of many different branches of knowledge, of architecture and engineering. Shastra has many translations. The word Shastra, pronounced properly, Shastra, long A, means in this context, science and sacred knowledge. Sacred, very sacred knowledge, science. So Vastu Shastra is actually a very holistic architectural master craft. It's a very advanced form of architecture, and this is what Kadama Muni manifested this Vastu Shastra in a higher dimensional form, in a subtle form, we call mystic powers. So he could float these vimanas. And interestingly, there are more and more evidences by the Sri Vaishnavas that, for example, Ramanuja Sampradaya, authentic Sampradaya, they do a lot of research in Yajur Veda and many other Vedas, just regarding the old temples in South India, like Sri Ranganath, Rangam, Tirumala, Tirupati, many of these old temples. And they're finding more evidences in some of the Sthapatya Veda, architectural shastras, that actually they build in heavenly planets. And Vishwakarma Dev, who is the celestial architect of the Devas, the demigods, he personally brought them down here to glorify Ranganath or Venkateshwar. He also had a deal with Kuvera, great demigods, to benefit the people of Dwapara Yuga, especially, because many of these temples going back to Dwapara Yuga, really. And we still have the great fortune to see many of these temples. And he personally designed and built them in the heavenly planet and brought them here, obviously the Vimana. So this temple is actually Vimanas, placed in a particular holy place. So you can see there's still some Vimanas on the planet, but obviously installed, just like the deities are installed. So the Vimanas. And then there's another Shastra called Hari Vamsi Purana. So we have 18 Puranas, and 6 Puranas occupied with one of the gunas, as we know, mode of ignorance, mode of passion, mode of goodness. And there's also supplementary Puranas. Hari Vamsi Purana is one of the supplementary Puranas, where Vishwakarma explains systematically how he was requested by Lord Krishna, ultimately, to design the Dwaraka city and build Dwaraka city. So you got all the celestial architects, we call Sthapati, masters of the universe. And together they built this beautiful city called Dwaraka, where Krishna could perform his lila. And it was designed in a certain way. So until Krishna is present, the city remains intact. So he designed in a particular way, astrologically calculated. So there are many great master architects of the universe, we call celestial architects. Mayan Danava, he is another great personality. He is often known as the architect of the Asuras. Although he himself is not actually an Asura. I heard Srila Prabhupada mention in a particular context, in a morning walk conversation, he was just hired by the Asuras, sometimes hired by the Devas. He was the king of the Danavas, highly advanced in technology and mystic arts, invisible forms. He created, if you read the Mahabharata, very beautiful stories there. Arjuna saved his life, and Mayandanava felt obliged and grateful to Arjuna and the Pandavas. He always wanted to repay some service. This meant Krishna himself requested Mayandanava to design a beautiful assembly hall for King Yudhishthira with all these mystical arts. As we know, later on Duryodhana was humiliated by these tricks. So Mayandana was very expert in Vimana Shastra. So you can see that they were already great architects of the universe. They could create all these subtle Vimanas. And Kadama Muni, like I said, took it to another level. He was already a mystic. He could manifest all these Vimanas by meditation, manasa, yogic meditation, yogic powers. So obviously, very evolved, very exalted personality. And so we can just see, like I said earlier, that Krishna empowers all these personalities, great rishis, sages, to teach us or to show or the actual pastimes in Krishna's lila, and Devahuti and Kadama Muni, and also that Kadama Muni was such a pure sage, pure personality that he was never proud of his creations, of his powers. He was not ambitious for material power, but to please his wife, Devahuti, manifested this beautiful flying city. And we read the chapter and the verses further on, it explains more details about the palace. And just like when you visit some of the architecture since antiquity, like we go to Roman Empire or some of the Gothic or Renaissance architecture, very fine arts. When you go to these cathedrals, wow! You can see that there was some careful thought, careful scientific process, the way they build this. These architects were great God-conscious persons. They really glorified God. You can see some of these cathedrals are incredible. I grew up amongst cathedrals in Hungary. It's incredible masterpieces. And so they glorified God. Michelangelo, you can see it, even in our modern context. They were so, evolved in architecture. And not to speak of the Vedic architecture. They were very advanced. So Vedic architecture explains in the form of Shastra, the scriptures, as a very systematic design, engineering, but the ultimate purpose was again to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's why the Vedic architecture was known as sacred architecture, temple architecture, very beautiful. But as we're coming into our current, times, Kali Yuga is progressing to hell, unfortunately, going backwards. Our technology is becoming more and more gross. All the mathematical concepts still the same, but the refined, the fine art, the metaphysical expressions, the spiritual significance is disappearing gradually. Because if you see, even in, let's say, 17th century, 16th century, the architecture was always about some kind of God-conscious projection, see, something. Even the kings and the palaces and all about, some kind of almighty God. And ideally, they were supposed to represent God consciousness. So, but in current times, no, we become very gross, and we don't have the understanding of that there's such a thing as subtle laws or mystic powers. Most people. So, but if you study the Bhagavatam systematically, scientifically, analyzing things, patiently, hearing, then we can understand it. Gradually we can understand that there is such possibility. There's not just some kind of imaginative description here. The very advanced technologies of the Vedas. The Vedas are very advanced in technologies. So, and so many scriptures on that too. So this very beautiful description here, and how the certain, like the emerald and the jewels, and they all have a significance also. everything meant. Srila Prabhupada often talks about some of these temples in India, bring some example about the Mughal empires, the Taj Mahal, and many of these places. They were bedecked with rubies and emerald and precious stones, of course being plundered, but it was so brilliant that they could enlighten the sky at night. They didn't have they're just simply glowing and effulgence because of the brilliance of the precious stones. And of course, like I said, being plundered by invasions, and India suffered a lot, unfortunately. And many of these temples and palaces were real wealth, gold. Even the deities surrounded with gold. By the way, Tirupati is famous about solid gold, lots of solid gold even now. The altars and the gates and solid gold, the domes are solid gold, see? So you can see the opulence of the Vedic era. You can't even comprehend the opulence they had, which is deteriorating and disappearing in Kali Yuga. We don't see this opulence anymore. Only superficial things, not real opulence. And so there's a very beautiful way. So, is any question or comments? So this is just one of the verses, a purport, kind of get into the building, the detail, the city, the decoration, the opulence and the power. And it's connected to the other verses, which also continues the same description. But there's always a message here. There's a line of thought, a line of message here. The opulence of Kadama Muni and Devauti, and they never became proud or puffed up of their material opulence. They always understood that this is all Krishna's gift. Especially Devauti could understand. Her husband was an extraordinary, exalted yogi, and she realized that actually the real wealth is loving devotion to the Supreme Godhead. So material wealth is all illusory. Nevertheless, Kadama Muni wanted to please his wife. You see, he showed that he's capable, even materially, manifest, and exhibit powers. So he was not. He was very exemplary, extraordinary, and of course, because of his purity and devotion, Kapila, as we read the chapters later, Kapila Muni, incarnation of Godhead, see, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared, who was actually very famous as we read the chapters. I don't want to touch too much of that, but so Kapila was the son of Kadama Muni and Devauti, who was an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we can see how exalted they are and what they could do. So many ways to explain it, of course. And so, any comments or questions?
Thanks. Thank you for the class, Prabhu. Like back in these previous ages, like the Sat Yuga, they had so much material opulence, but yet somehow they weren't attracted by it, and that just goes to show like how exalted people were. Or yet in this age,
Yes.
we're still attracted to material opulence, even though we see that it's quite degraded.
Yes.
And also destroying the planet with people buying different things that is unnecessary.
Yeah, exactly. You see, very good comment. In previous yugas, they were very much dominated with enlightened knowledge. Aryan Aryan is actually means supreme civilization, which gives more emphasis on self-realization, understanding the true objective of life, beyond and above material sense gratification. Kali Yuga is the opposite. It's all about sense gratification, and because of sense gratification, that's why we have the consumerist society. Everyone is consuming and working for that. And no one is happy. And that's what happened if you read the chapters again. The devotee actually approached Kadama Muni. Why? He provided all this facility, beautiful vimana, opulent sense gratification. She was even lamenting that I indulge in sense gratification and involved my husband, Kadama Muni, also. So this is meant Kadama Muni enlightens devotee even further about the purpose of life, really. So we can understand again from this that the true wealth is really spiritual wealth, a transcendental realization. Just like as simple devotees, we realize, oh, the opportunity we have here in the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a real wealth. It's a real wealth. It's incredible. I mean, if you really analyze. Because we can be amongst the devotees, we can love and worship Krishna, we can spread the glories of the holy name. Chanting the holy names is the ultimate wealth. I know it sounds really, but it is a question of realization. And once we realize, this is when inspiration comes, empowerment comes. And we can see in Srila Prabhupada's mission, noble mission, so many powerful, inspired, enthusiastic preachers, devotees. You know, devotees are actually progressing gradually, you can see. Gradually, they may not show their progress out of humility, just like Kadama Muni was very humble. He just wanted to please his wife, that's all. He just, understanding the nature of his wife, she wanted that, okay, I'll give you. But when he does something, wow, flying city. But in spiritual life is really the wealth, the jewel, crown of knowledge, Raja Vidya, king of knowledge. Prabhupada wrote a beautiful book on that, you should read. Raja Vidya, king of knowledge, the supreme. When we read this, we get inspiration, determination, and when we have the realization, the wealth we have, the treasure we have. The very beautiful stories in the Chaitanya Charitamrita about this too. But the holy name is the most valuable treasure. And the Goswamis exhibited, Sanatana Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami. There's nothing more valuable than the chanting of the holy names of Krishna. Then Bhaktivinoda Thakur further explains very, very scientifically, clearly, Harinam Chintamani, many, many other beautiful treatises and scriptures and summary studies. The holy name has unlimited glories. If you just understand a bit, even just a bit, we are perfected. We just understand how fortunate we are. Under the shelter of the lotus feet of the assembly of the devotees and Srila Prabhupada, we go back home. We don't even need a vimana, we just go back home. Vishnu Dutas will come. So we have that faith and we feel really wealthy, truly opulent and wealthy in our heart, because the real wealth is here, sitting in our hearts, really, Krishna. But we have to realize that with humble seva, humble service, be patient, because it takes a bit of time to, discover have the realization. But we have enough realization and faith to practice, especially together, because we get strength from each other. We get faith, This Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I'm going back to Godhead. Okay, Hare Krishna. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna. Jai, Jai I think it was, I think Raghunath Das Goswami. Sanatana Goswami. Sanatana Goswami. That's what I was going to say. Sanatana Goswami. Yeah, because he realized if Sanatana Goswami throws this beautiful diamond of gold in a garbage pile, he must have something more valuable. Who would do that? Who would throw a big piece of diamond or jewel in a garbage pile? Unless he's mad or something better. So he thought, he's got something better. So he went back to, so tell me, what is your value? What do you have, And this man revealed the holy name, Shri Harinam, more valuable than anything. He got the realization. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Vimanas, you see, at least what I know is Sri Rangam in Ranganath temple in South India. They're not built in this Kali Yuga, built in Dwapara Yuga, and they're built in a heavenly planet, in a higher planetary systems. And the celestial architect called Vishwakarma personally brought them down like Kadama Muni did this. Yeah. Amazing. Like a Viman basically. Put them down here because it was meant to be, it was a pastime. Ranganath, Venkateshwar, Lord Vishnu, see? They come. So, I don't know exactly. I know. Yeah, aircraft. Yeah, Vimana. Uh-huh. Yeah, it could be. It could be. But I know this has more evidences now coming from the Ramanuja Sampradaya, because they have a lot of script. They study the Vedas, but they study the Yajur Veda, one of the aspects of the Vedic. There's 4 major Vedas, as you know: Rig Veda, Atharva Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda. So they're all occupied with certain things, all authentic. And then we have the conclusions of the Vedas called Vedanta. Anta means conclusion, Vedanta. And then summary study of the Vedanta, Bhagavad Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam. So the real knowledge, the real conclusion, the conclusive teachings are here. So this is the ultimate thing, because when you study Bhagavad Gita, which is the ABC, the foundation, and you're building your knowledge with this one, this is the ultimate knowledge, Bhagavad Purana, Supreme Purana, This is not, because like I said, 18 Puranas, they're still in the modes, This is not even above more goodness, transcendental here, transcendental goodness. This actually rises above even the Purana. It's a supreme Purana, Bhagavad Purana, transcendental. So, yes? Yeah, a lot of these things, we can assume. We don't know where they come from really, but they obviously come from different regions. And mentioned in the Bhagavatam, some of these regions are actually very advanced in technology. We mentioned in the creation, the second canto, and many other. Some of these lower regions are very advanced in technology because they don't have the same facility what we have. Like they don't have the sunlight. They're in a different region. Lower region we call lower region. They have to have technology they have to create the technology to exist even. And as you go higher, in the planetary systems, it becomes more refined, subtle. And if you probably heard or read that there are different oceans also. We're in the middle planetary system. We have a salt water ocean. And below, just below us, the ocean of oil. And that's what they're tapping into in in the ocean of oil. That's already a lower gross form. As you're going lower, it becomes more gross. You go higher, it becomes more subtle and sattvic, goodness. So, yes, yes, same universe. I mean, in theory, you could travel there, but the thing is, we don't have the suitable body. Because, like I said, they comes in different subtleties. You see, the same elements ruling, the 5 elements, but they're different, proportionately different. See, very different. Like in a heavenly planets, more subtleties, more subtle, lower, more gross. See, so we're not really capable to live in these planets. Yeah, in the planetary systems, yeah, that's of course space. Because like if every planet, every universe is like an egg shape called Brahmanda. Anda means egg shape, Brahmanda. And then there's a flat plane, there's a mountain called Mount Meru, like the axis. There's only one sun in each universe going around, see? And there are different layers of planetary systems, as you go higher, lower. And the top of Mount Meru is Brahmaloka, see? Brahmaloka. So you can see, difficult for us to visualize this, although there are some images on this, just to have a comprehension. Because like I said, it already surpasses the 3 dimension, 4th dimension, 5th dimension, the subtle, see? And so we're in a 3-dimensional physical nature, physical nature. But they're still in the material creation, yes. The transcendence is even beyond that, you see? Just like Bhagavad Gita also explains that we have the physical body, the gross physical body, made of Agni, fire element, see? We have fire of digestion, we have water, the body is made of 70% water, see? And we have the bones, the minerals, the earth elements, see? And we have the air, the prana, because we're part of this, see? So the 5 elements, but then we also have the mind, see? Manasa, we call mind, see? Subtle, see? Etheric, subtle, you can see. We know it takes energy too if you're thinking too much, And the buddhi means intelligence, which is a bit more subtle, see? And even beyond that is the ego, the false identifications, the subtle things. It's forming another body, see? Subtle body. The gross physical body and a subtle body. Just like you have a computer, the hardware, and the software, see? So the mind, ego, and intellect creates another so-called software, subtle. So, in the earthly plane, that's how we exist. But you go higher, they become more subtle rather than physical, gross physical, see? But still part of the material creation, see? Just more advanced. Yeah. See, so like I said, that in the Bhagavad Gita, if you read Prabhupada's purports, it explains that you see we have the physical elements, the 5 elements, the Mahabhutas, the 5 elements, and the subtle elements, mind, the ego, the intellect, intelligence. The soul is even more subtle. That's become transcendental by nature. It's not belong to this material atmosphere. We just happen to be here because we are marginal. We can live in both atmosphere, both, We can adapt a bit, Because we're not actually from here, therefore we're not completely content or happy or suffer, Because it's not our real home, see? If I go to Argentina, and trying to adapt. I may adapt for a while, but I have to learn the language, I have to do this, I have to get the visas, and there's always some problem. So, just a different environment, and then eventually you think, oh gee, I'm not happy here anyway, so so we not actually belong to the material world, although we can live in the material world because we adapting, because we are marginal, see. We are spiritual by nature, we are, but we are also called marginal, see. See, we can be between, see. So we can live in both atmospheres, see. And but Krishna actually wants us to return because he knows we cannot be fully happy here. We are limited and restricted. Rather, we suffer, you can see, because the laws of nature, see, very intricate, complex. And every action brings a reaction, see, cause and effect. So it's not our place to be. Our home is really where Krishna is, you see. We are individual, loving devotees of Krishna. That's our original. We call Nitya Swarupa, original. We're having this journey here, we can see you're having a, but not very, I would say it's not really, first of all, it's a temporary experience, we all know, see, transitory. And it's full of miseries. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, from the highest planet to the lowest, from the lowest to the highest, all places of misery, where repeated birth, death takes place. So, you can see that the suffering is the main kind of dominating principle here, see, suffering. Yeah, Kali Yuga especially, because like I said, it's forgetfulness. We've forgotten. In other yugas, people are more enlightened. Like I said in the story, that they weren't giving much emphasis on sense gratification. They just understood what to be done. They were advanced. Aryam, advanced. Aryam means advanced. See? Supreme civilizations, Aryan civilizations. In modern world is emphasis on, gross things, sense gratification basically, and anything connected to sense gratification, anything. So, and that's why society, individually and collectively, not really happy and content, no matter what we have. Technologies, money, doesn't matter. It's all temporary anyway. So no one can be truly happy. The only way to be happy is to reconnect, having that connection with Krishna, see? Loving devotion. Loving devotion service. So once we have that yoga connection with Krishna, we are happy, automatically. And the best way to connect with Krishna, that's it. You going out today, or you going? You better go. Hari. Was okay?